I received the email exactly 7 minutes before the board meeting. No subject line, no signature, just 10 words. Don't let them show slide 42. You'll regret it. I thought it was spam, maybe a prank, but something in my gut twisted. I opened the presentation deck on my phone and scrolled. Slide 42 wasn't just altered, it was poisoned. My name was there, tied to a security breach that could destroy my career. And the worst part? Only 3 people had access to that slide. One of them was me. The other 2 were people I once trusted with my life. I used to believe that hard work spoke for itself. That if you built something valuable, people would notice. That belief had shaped most of my adult life, and it was the very thing that was about to break me. For the past 6 months, I'd been leading a team on a high-stakes fraud detection system, an AI-integrated engine designed to flag suspicious financial activity in real time. Our beta had already saved the company over $20 million in potential losses. No bonuses, no public recognition, but I didn't care. Not really. Or at least, that's what I told myself. Every night I drove home past midnight, my windshield reflecting empty streets in quiet guilt. That night was no different. I crept into the house at 2:17 a.m. The lights were off, the silence heavier than usual. On the fridge, I found a note in crayon. I made this today at school. For you. Taped underneath was a photo. Me, smiling, holding my daughter Emily from some forgotten weekend months ago. Under it, in her handwriting, "This is my dad. He's the smartest. But I miss him." I stood there for a long time, staring at those words until my eyes burned. I powered up my laptop and rechecked the main algorithm. Line by line, everything was in order, except for a strange tag deep in the source code. A comment left behind. "Don't touch this." My heart skipped. I hadn't written that. No one on my team would be reckless enough to leave a live tag like that in production code. The line linked to an alternate server path, one I didn't recognize. Internal, unlisted. I stared at it, a bad feeling coiling in my chest. Was it a test file someone forgot? A dev prank? Or something worse? I checked the access logs. Redacted. Scrubbed clean. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. Instead, I sat in the dark, listening to the house breathe, asking myself one simple question. If you found something wrong, something dangerous, would you speak up, knowing it could cost you everything? The next morning, I arrived at the office early, trying to beat the storm inside my head. The main conference room was abuzz. A major presentation was scheduled for the board later that week, showcasing the success of our fraud system. But my name wasn't on the materials. I double-checked the deck. No mention of my work. No graphs I built. Not even a thank you slide. And standing at the head of the room, shaking hands and laughing like he'd won a goddamn lottery, was Mike Bennett, my colleague, my friend. Mike caught my eye, walked over, grinned, and said, "Hey Dan, sorry they had to cut your section. You know how it is. Too many cooks, not enough time." Then he patted my shoulder like we were still friends. It was the kind of smile that tells you it's already too late. That night, Emily was on a video call with her classmates. I overheard her giggle and say, "My dad's a hacker, but people at his job don't like him much." She didn't know I was listening. She didn't know that sentence felt like a punch to the ribs. Later, I pulled the new deck again. Slide 42 had been replaced, no longer just showcasing a data anomaly. It now directly referenced a breach. The breach, with embedded code from our system, but the parameters had been altered. enough to shift blame, enough to trace it back to me. I scanned the metadata. Someone had modified it using my credentials. Time-stamped for a day I'd been working remotely. Mike was the only one with VPN admin access that day. The final insult came in a meeting the next morning. Our department head, Troy, cornered me after reviewing the presentation. "Don't stir the pot, Daniel," he said, voice low, eyes avoiding mine. "This is bigger than just you. Let it go. Keep your job." I wanted to scream. Instead, I smiled. Understood. But I wasn't done. Not by a long shot. That night, an anonymous email landed in my inbox. No greeting, no context. Just, "Slide 42 will bury you. Check the server room logs now." I spent that night combing through the server room logs, hoping the anonymous tip had been wrong. It wasn't. Every access entry from the night the breach supposedly occurred had been wiped, completely. No residual metadata, no auto backups, like it had never existed. Except one detail didn't make sense. The wipe had been executed using admin-level credentials tied to my device. But I hadn't used my machine that night, at least not directly. A sinking thought pulled at me. I turned toward Emily's bedroom. Her tablet, a cheap model we'd set up so she could draw and play music, had once been tethered to my work account for a school project months ago. I hadn't disconnected it. I checked the sync history. One file, automatically backed up from a test compile I'd run at home. The same file that now appeared on slide 42. I stared at the tablet in my hands, equal parts horror and awe tightening in my chest. I hadn't just been set up. Someone had used my daughter's toy to do it. When I told Amanda, my wife, she didn't react the way I thought she would. No outrage, no rush of support, just silence. Then she looked at me with eyes too tired to fight anymore and said, "You need to leave that place. I don't care what they take from you. Holding on to your dignity is noble, but it won't keep you safe. It won't keep us safe." I had no answer. Just a slow nod and a weight in my gut I couldn't shake. That afternoon, Mike found me in the break room. He moved like nothing had happened, all charm and familiarity, leaning casually against the counter. "They're going to offer you a way out," he said, voice low. "All you have to do is agree. Say you overlooked the breach. Don't fight it. They'll move you to another team. Quiet, low profile. You keep your job, your rep, your paycheck, clean cut." I blinked at him. "Why me?" "Because you're valuable, even now. And because you're not a threat, unless you make yourself one." He smiled like we were still friends, like we were boys playing pretend, and he hadn't just handed me to the wolves. "And you?" I asked. "What do you get?" He shrugged. "Stability, access, future. Same thing we've all been trying to get." I wanted to hit him. I wanted to break that smug, surgical calm. But all I said was, "You've changed." He shook his head. "No. I just stopped pretending this place plays fair." When he left, I didn't follow. I just stood there, gripping the counter, thinking, maybe survival really does mean betrayal. Would I sell my silence to save my name? That night, I couldn't sleep. So I did what I hadn't done in years. I broke protocol. I wrote a script. One I'd sworn I'd never use outside of test environments. It was a shadow line, an invisible tracker that logged access and behavior across internal systems, hidden behind innocuous service pings. I embedded it into 3 key endpoints: financial reports, personnel files, and security logs. If someone moved, I'd know. Within 24 hours, I had data. And it didn't just show Mike accessing restricted files, it showed him receiving instructions from Troy, from board-level proxies. But the real twist? One name stood out among them. Ralph Dorson, my former supervisor, the man who'd once warned me never to trust what the board says at face value. He was no longer with the company, allegedly fired for performance issues. But I could see it now. He had been the first scapegoat, the prototype. I reached out to Sarah, a new data analyst I barely knew but had seen in Mike's orbit. We crossed paths in the hallway, and I asked a simple question. Do you trust him? She paused, glanced around, then whispered, No. Later that day, she slid a flash drive across my desk during lunch. I found this by accident. You didn't get it from me. It was a series of chat logs, Mike coordinating narrative shifts with legal, planning what to bury, when, who to cut. My name highlighted in yellow. That night, Emily asked for a bedtime story. I didn't have the heart to read from a book, so I made one up. Once there was a knight who built a wall to protect his kingdom, I began, but some people didn't like how strong the wall was, so they broke it from the inside and blamed the knight. What did he do? She whispered, eyes wide. I kissed her forehead. He started building again, this time with eyes everywhere. The next morning, an internal calendar notification popped up. A meeting. Critical. Mandatory for department heads. I wasn't on the invite list. But as I passed Sarah in the hallway, she leaned close and whispered, You need to be there. I shouldn't have walked into that room. But I did. The doors to the executive conference center weren't locked, just uninviting. I pushed them open, stepped inside, and felt the air shift the moment my shoes touched the carpet. 20 sets of eyes turned to me, some surprised, some annoyed, a few already calculating. At the front, Mike stood beside a massive screen, the company logo glowing behind him like a halo. He paused mid-sentence, then smiled that practiced, polished smile of his. Ah, he said lightly. Dan, glad you could make it. We were just getting to your part. My part. Slide 42 loaded. I watched it appear like a guillotine drawn from velvet. There it was, the modified code, the chart of the breach, the time-stamped user credentials. My name, front and center. The air turned to ice. Unfortunately, Mike continued, this breach cost us not only financially, but reputationally. We believe it stemmed from a failure to follow internal protocols, something we must take seriously, regardless of intent. Troy, the department head, folded his arms. Daniel, would you like to respond? I looked at them. Their still faces, their crafted concern. They didn't want truth. They wanted compliance. I opened my mouth, then closed it. I reached into my pocket and pressed play on a small audio device clipped to my lapel. A gift from Sarah slipped into my hand just that morning. The room filled with their own voices. Shift the narrative to Daniel. If we lose him, it's acceptable. Collateral. Get him to sign, then bury the report. The voices of Mike, Troy, and one board member. Gasps. Chairs scraped back. Mike's expression didn't falter, but his eyes narrowed. I stopped the recording. The silence afterward was almost holy. No one moved. Until Troy cleared his throat. This doesn't change the fact that... That what? I interrupted. That you set me up? Used my credentials, my family's device, my work, and now want me to nod along while you burn me alive? He looked at me, then at the others. You have to understand the pressures we're under. I do, better than you think. Later that night, at home, I sat beside Emily on the couch. She was drawing with crayons, quiet. I asked how school was. She didn't answer, just looked up at me and said, "Are you a bad guy, Daddy?" My throat closed. I almost lied, almost said no. Instead, I said, "I'm trying really hard not to be." She nodded slowly. "Then keep trying." The next day, Troy called me into his office. He didn't rage. He didn't plead. He negotiated. "We'll offer you a quiet exit," he said. "No press, no formal inquiry. You'll sign a statement saying you made an error in oversight. That's it. In return, we offer you full severance, positive references, and, well, security. For you and your family." He leaned forward. "Don't make this bigger than it needs to be." I thought of Amanda, of Emily's crayon drawing, of the shame I'd carry if I took the deal. And then I stood up. "No," I said, "this is already bigger than any of us." He didn't stop me as I left, but as I walked away, I could feel it. Something had cracked. I submitted my resignation before they could fire me. No press release, no meeting. Just a single email. Subject: resignation, effective immediately. Then I uploaded the full system backup. Logs, chat transcripts, email threads, metadata. From a burner device straight to the SEC's whistleblower portal. The process took less than 2 minutes. I waited until the confirmation came through. Then I shut the laptop, walked into the kitchen, and made pancakes for dinner. Amanda raised her eyebrows when she saw me cooking. I shrugged. I thought I'd try being human again. That night, we sat as a family for the first time in weeks. Emily insisted we all draw together. Amanda smiled, even if her eyes were tired. But inside me, a storm still swirled. I hadn't won anything yet. I'd only stopped bleeding. Just before midnight, I received an email from a secure, anonymized server. "We've been watching them for 3 years. You've just given us proof. Let's finish this. IJ. Invisible Justice." I'd heard rumors of them. Journalists, ex-insiders, tech people disillusioned with the system. They'd been collecting stories. Now they had data. Real, provable data. I sent them everything. The chat logs between Mike and Troy. The audio file Sarah had given me. Even the fragment of code pointing to the unauthorized server path. The war had started, and now I had allies. Somewhere else in the city, Mike's phone buzzed. A single message. "There's a leak. We think it's Daniel." And right then, my own phone vibrated. A text from my mother. "Your father tried to fight them once too, but he stayed silent too long, and it killed him. Don't make the same mistake." The headline hit the wires at 6:43 a.m. FinTech Co. under investigation for internal fraud and data manipulation. By 7:15, every major financial news outlet had picked it up. By 9:01, the company's stock had fallen 12% and was still dropping. I watched it unfold in silence from the cafe across the street, my laptop open, untouched coffee cooling beside me. My face was nowhere in the articles. Yet. But the documents I'd leaked had ignited something unstoppable. Invisible Justice had done their part, and now the fire was public. I shut the lid and looked out the window. Emily tugged on my sleeve. "We're going to be late." She held her art kit, bouncing with excitement. Her Saturday class was in a sunny old building, lined with vines, a place where nothing felt rushed or broken. I walked her in, helped her set up her easel, then just sat in the back and watched her paint. For the first time in weeks, I let myself breathe, but the outside world hadn't stopped burning. By afternoon, anonymous whistleblowers, encouraged by the leak, began posting on message boards, confirming everything. One user, Ghost Buffer, identified himself as a former IT contractor, claimed he'd been fired unjustly 5 years ago for refusing to participate in a data concealment order. He uploaded redacted logs, proving that the same systems in question had been under internal scrutiny since 2020. His evidence linked directly to one name, Troy. I almost dropped my phone. Back at home, Amanda was waiting in the living room, arms crossed, but eyes softer than before. "You're not just doing this for revenge, are you?" "No," I said. "I'm doing it because no one else ever did." That evening, Mike called. Once, twice, 10 times. Then he texted, "We need to talk, please." I didn't answer. I paced the kitchen for hours. I had one last backup, a heavily encrypted file containing personal communications, financial trailings, and direct proof that board members had profited from fraudulent activity. I'd kept it out of the initial leak. It was my final card. Amanda stepped into the doorway. "You look like you're waiting for something to explode." "I am." "What happens if you push it too far?" I didn't have an answer. Just questions. What would releasing this file accomplish? What would it destroy? The company was already bleeding. Thousands of employees, not just the guilty, would be impacted. But this wasn't just about the company anymore. It was about the system that allowed people like Troy, like Mike, to thrive. Then the phone rang. Blocked number. I answered on instinct. A voice, calm and measured. Male, not familiar. "Mr. Harper, I represent certain interests who believe your recent actions, while emotionally understandable, are becoming disruptive." I said nothing. "You're interfering with processes that reach far beyond one company. This isn't about your personal grievance anymore." "I know." He paused. "Then you should understand that pushing further could have unintended consequences for your family, your future. We suggest you stop. Now." The call ended before I could respond. I stared at the wall for a full minute. Then I opened the backup folder and uploaded everything. Let the system burn. By the following morning, chaos had a face. FinTech Co.'s offices were surrounded by press vans. The CEO had stepped down. Troy was on leave. Employees were walking out with boxes. The market hemorrhaged trust. The news camera caught Mike being led out by 2 internal investigators. He didn't fight, just walked, blank-eyed, through the sea of microphones. I watched it alone, standing in the kitchen, the volume low. Amanda came in, holding 2 mugs. She set one down and looked at me. "Do you feel better?" she asked. "No." "Do you feel lighter?" "Not yet." The ripple effect had begun. Several fintech startups announced they were severing all partnerships with FinTech Co. One group publicly endorsed an ethics-first model based on anonymous advisory oversight, nearly identical to the framework I'd outlined in a private white paper months ago. That same day, I received an email from a private server. The message was brief. "We've studied your system. We'd like to build it with you. Let's talk." No signature, no logo. Just coordinates for a meeting. I didn't respond. Not yet. Then came the knock on my door. It wasn't frantic. It wasn't hesitant. Just a firm, deliberate rhythm. I opened it, and there he was. Ralph Dorson, my former supervisor. The one who'd vanished years ago, allegedly disgraced. He looked tired, older, but there was something steady in his gaze. "We need to talk," he said. Ralph stood in the doorway, like he didn't know if I would slam it in his face or pull him into a hug. I did neither. I stepped aside, let him in, and watched him scan the room like someone who hadn't been in a home for a long time. We sat at the kitchen table. Amanda stayed upstairs. Emily was out with a neighbor. The silence between us lasted longer than it should have. "I owe you an apology," he said finally. I didn't answer. I waited. "I tried," he said, "back then, when they started pushing that first data suppression project. I went to the board. Quietly. I thought they'd care. They didn't." He shook his head. "Worse, they used it. Twisted my concerns into a story of incompetence. Mike presented a report showing I'd signed off on false projections. I hadn't, but he had footage. Of me. From a night I don't even remember. Drunk. Saying things that sounded bad. He kept that video. Used it to keep me silent. To push me out. That's blackmail," I said. He looked at me, tired. "It's business." And for a moment, I believed him. That maybe the system had chewed him up long before I ever got close to it. That he was a ghost in the machine, warning me before I made the same mistakes. "I should have told you," he added. "Warned you, but I was scared and ashamed." We sat in silence. Outside, birds chirped like nothing in the world was broken. Later that night, Emily brought over the Lego box and said, "Let's build something that doesn't fall." We worked for over an hour. Towers, walls, small figurines. I watched her hands more than the pieces. How careful she was. How steady. She looked up at me and said, "Sometimes you have to take the whole thing apart first, right?" I nodded. "Yeah, sometimes that's the only way to make it better." I stared at Ralph across the room and wondered, can you forgive someone who once left you to drown if they were drowning too? Later, after everyone had gone to bed, I opened my laptop. There was one folder I hadn't touched since the first backup, marked in red, Rebuild Protocol.def. I clicked it open. It wasn't just a document, it was a blueprint. Phase 1, data exposure. Phase 2, narrative control. Phase 3, systems restoration. But the real surprise was hidden deeper. Phase 4, names, contacts, encrypted IDs. It was a network. People, insiders, victims, witnesses, all silently embedded in major corporations. People who had survived what I had and decided silence wasn't enough anymore. I didn't recognize every name, but some I did. A compliance officer from a bank I once consulted for. A former HR director blacklisted after whistleblowing. Even a board member, still active, marked as sympathetic but dormant. The document wasn't about revenge. It was about reconstruction. The file included scripts, infrastructure, even templates for policy drafts, code and content meant to shape ethical frameworks from inside broken systems. It was elegant, dangerous, necessary. The next morning, my mother called. "You look tired," she said, "like your father used to look." "I'm fine, Mom." "No, you're not, but I'm proud of you. You're not just trying to change the world, you're fixing what they broke." She paused. "That's harder." That afternoon, I logged into an anonymous virtual workshop. The title at the top read, Invisible Justice, Session 12, Retaliation and Reconstruction. There were 9 of us. No names, just voices, sharing stories, comparing notes, refining language that could make broken systems accountable. We weren't just venting anymore. We were building. I offered my framework, the one from Rebuild Protocol. It was met with silence at first, then a slow series of affirmations. This works. We could adapt this. Where do we begin? Someone asked, do we publish this openly? And there it was, the next wall. If we went public, people on that list could be exposed, lives ruined, not just the corrupt, but those trying to help quietly from inside. I stared at the screen, Do you burn the last bridge or leave it intact for others to cross? I saved the discussion and logged off. Hours later, a new email appeared in my inbox. Encrypted. No sender. The subject line read, "Integrity as a Service." Inside was an invitation from a major multinational conglomerate. They wanted to adopt my system, build an internal reform strategy using the rebuild protocol as a foundation, and offer to meet generous compensation, full control, and at the bottom, a signature, Chief Ethics Officer, Margaret DeWitt. My pulse skipped. Margaret, former board member of FinTech Co. She disappeared 2 years ago after a brief scandal. The rumors were she'd resigned for personal reasons. I remembered her voice, sharp, calculating, the kind of person who smiled with her teeth but not her eyes. Now she wanted to rebuild with me. The office was quiet, not in a cold corporate way, but in the way of a place that listened more than it spoke. Glass walls, open-air layouts, screens displaying not stock prices, but accountability metrics. At the top of it all, etched into a black steel plaque above the entrance, "Integrity First." I sat across from the founder, Jonas Kim, a man I hadn't seen in nearly 8 years. Back then, he'd been a junior compliance officer at FinTech Co., fired after refusing to sign off on a falsified audit. I'd barely known him, just a name on a CC line in an email chain. But now he was here, older, sharper, and determined. "I saw what you built," he said. "Rebuild protocol wasn't just good. It was necessary. We've taken your draft and made it policy. We want you to oversee implementation, not just here, but across our partner firms." I blinked. All of them? 18 countries, over 4,000 employees. You'll be shaping ethics from the top down. I said yes. The next morning, I made breakfast slowly. Real butter, not margarine. Fresh eggs, not rushed takeout. Emily padded into the kitchen, hair still tangled, eyes half closed. "You're home," she said. "I am," I answered, "and I'll be home again tomorrow." I walked her to school. No phone in my hand, no urgent buzz in my pocket. Just her little fingers wrapped around mine, warm and firm. We passed the corner where I used to cut across when I was running late. We didn't take the shortcut. At the gate, she looked up. "You're smiling," she said. "I know." The Integrity First model didn't spread like wildfire. It spread like roots. Quiet, steady, impossible to pull back once planted. Small firms adopted it first, then mid-size, then entire departments and conglomerates. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. Someone once told me, systems don't change from the outside. They rot from within, and if you're lucky, you can regrow something from the pieces. I never believed that until I became the one planting seeds. One day, I received an email. No greeting, no signature, just a message from a financial analyst in a firm I didn't recognize. "They're burying something. I don't know who to trust. Can you help?" I stared at the screen, heart slowing, not fear, clarity. I didn't answer right away, but I didn't delete it either. Later that week, Amanda found me on the porch, watching the sunset bleed over the rooftops. "You okay?" she asked. "I think so," I said, for the first time in a long time. "Not fighting anymore?" I turned to her. "I'm fighting better." She smiled, leaned on my shoulder. The silence didn't need to be filled. We were whole again, not because everything was perfect, but because we'd rebuilt, piece by piece, honest and fragile and real. A few months later, we held Emily's 9th birthday party in the backyard. She wanted a space theme. I wore a tinfoil hat. Amanda painted stars on the cupcakes. No catering, no decorations from a store. Just effort. Just us. I made the cake myself. Emily blew out the candles, then hugged me tight. I'm glad you're not gone anymore. I'm glad too. In the weeks that followed, I used my position to help launch something we called the Justice Seed Fund, a grant-based program for employees who had been punished for telling the truth. Whistleblower protection, legal assistance, even career placement. It wasn't huge yet, but it was real. Then one day, in a nondescript envelope with no return address, I found a card. It was handwritten. No name, no clues. Thank you. Because of you, I still believe good people exist. I held it for a long time, not because I needed the praise, but because it reminded me that every action, every push against the current, had reached someone I'd never see. That night, I tucked Emily in. She curled against the blanket, cheeks pink with sleep. As I watched her breathe, I whispered, I kept my promise, not just to you, but to me. And for the first time in a long time, I believed it.